political survivors wanted the establishment of a de facto unitary party, one party. And this made it difficult for any other party to come up. Although from the constitutional point of view, Cameroon, the Federal Republic of Cameroon from 1966 was a de jure political system, multi-party system, but there was a de facto one-party system. So in early 1972, and this is what most Cameroonians don't understand, in early 1972, John Ngoh wanted to create a political party. The documents are there in the archives. He went to Ngoh and met the phone of Ngoh and discussed the likelihood, the possibility of him creating a political party. He went to the extent of reminding the young Fon that his father had supported him in the 1950s in the creation of the KNDP. And he also counted on the new Fon to give him that political support. In the presence of John Ngoh, there was a kilo. Kilo was in the delegation that went and met the Fon of Ngoh. So by May 1972, everything had been put in place for the dismantling of the federal system. And all West Cameroon politicians, I repeat, all of them supported and campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system.
Now, if they all campaign for the dismantling of the federal system, how do we understand the stance of both John Ngoh and Estimuna after they resigned from the CPDM?
Yeah, the point is this. Historians are there to tell exactly what happened. Politicians might change their views many years down the road, but we are called upon to say exactly what they did at a particular time. In May 1972, campaigning in Bamenda, the stadium in Bamenda, Foncha said federation has outlived its usefulness. That's what he said. It is on record. Dr. Bernard Folon campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system. Mona campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system. Joa campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system. Lanjo Vincent campaigned for the dismantling. N. Billet did. Dr. E.M.L. Indeli did. Henry Langwell did. W.N.O. Epsom did. And Mao Egbert Tabi did. All of them campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system.
Now, you raised an issue of victimization that led some of them to move to seek favors from Amadou Ahidjo, President Amadou Ahidjo. What do you mean by victimization? Who was victimizing who, Prof?
It is this. Let me just give two examples again. In February 1972, Augustin Bamdra, who was replaced as Prime Minister of West Cameroon in January 1968, wrote to Amadou Ahidjo a confidential letter begging Amadou Ahidjo to come to his aid to protect him from Mr. Muna. And I'm sorry to say it, but it should be said. And the words that Honorable Muna, Honorable Ngomdra used were, protect me from Muna and his gangsters. He used the word Muna and gangsters. It is not Professor Ngoh saying it on record, Muna and his gangsters. Another example was when Mr. now late Fon Victor E. He was the board chair of CDC, Cameroon Development and Corporation, traveled to the U.S. and Prime Minister Joa prevented him from traveling on the false excuse that Mr. Victor E. Mukete had not repaid his loan, which he took from the Cameroon Bank. Whereas in actual fact, Mr. Victor E. Mukete had completely repaid his loan. It took the intervention of President Amadou Ahidjo for Victor E. Mukete to travel to the U.S. And there are examples and examples and examples. And you see, there are some of the things we have to say it. Even if tomorrow they try to say, oh, you are trying to split the Northwest. History doesn't respect anybody. History doesn't respect anybody. There are examples and examples. You have Peter Fange suffered. There are examples of political victimization in West Cameroon, and they all look at Amadou Ahidjo for protection.
Now, Professor, let us come back to the solution of political parties in 1966. Why was it so easy for President Amadou Ahidjo to convince politicians from West Cameroon to dissolve their party? Did they not see in that move as a possible scheme to integrate and ultimately overrun them?
You see, as I said, that there was political disunity between and amongst the West Cameroon even before the death of PM Kale in August 1960. PM Kale made it very clear that he and Dr. Ewane Ndele were not seeing eye to eye politically. When it was time for Honorable John Foncha to move over to Yaoundé as the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Cameroon and relinquish the position of Prime Minister of West Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo asked him for his advice on who should succeed him. Foncha initially gave the name of Mr. S.T. Muna. Ahidjo called Mr. Muna in the presence of Foncha and in the presence of Emmanuel and told Muna that Foncha had put for the post of Prime Minister. Muna thanked them. But when Foncha came to Boya and informed the Catholic Church, they explained to him that Muna was not a Catholic, Muna was a Protestant, and Muna was not a founding member of the KNDP. And they said Joa should be the Prime Minister. Foncha returned to Yaoundé and embarrassed Ahidjo by changing the person he wanted to succeed him. And that created a political problem between Muna and Foncha. And those who know the story well will tell you that Muna argued all along that constitutionally Ahidjo had the right to appoint who should be the Prime Minister. So this should give you an idea. So Muna, of course, left and I would like to make this point very clear. Muna was not dismissed from the KNDP. Sorry to what most people think. Muna resigned from the KNDP before the NEC could meet. Muna had resigned. So you cannot dismiss somebody who had already left a political party. So Muna left and created his own party. So you now had TUC in West Cameroon, CPNC in West Cameroon, KNDP in West Cameroon. So all these parties hated each other. And for their political survival, they all wanted a unitary, a one-party system. And remember, in 1953 in Yaoundé, when Joa asked Secretary of State for Finance for West Cameroon, held a meeting in Yaoundé with the Federal Minister of Finance, and after the meeting, Joa was interviewed, and Joa said the KNDP and the CC are working together, and the ultimate goal is to have one people, one nation, one destiny. That was what he said. the records of this interview are available. One people, one nation, one destiny. And you can draw your conclusion.
At this time, Professor, are we saying that in East Cameroon there were no other parties except the CNU? Or the party of President Amadou Ahidjo?
No, by 1966, the government of East Cameroon had successfully, because of Amadou Ahidjo, forced the other parties either to accept the one party system, because a good number of those political parties in East Cameroon were either imprisoned and Marim did, for instance, or were declared illegal, like the UPC, but you had the legal wing of the UPC led by Theodore Mati.
Okay, but at the time they were giving in, because if we get what Foncha and others complained later that they were not well treated, are we saying that there were some agreements that we are getting to support you, create your one party, and then we move on towards a unity form of government with clearly spelled out agreements that we should, this is how the interest of our respective communities should be respected in this form of government?
Yes, you see, the point is this: right from 1960-61, while Foncha, the KNP, was talking of a loose federation, Amadou Ahidjo all along was talking of a highly centralized federation. And unfortunately, the political parties in West Cameroon were so disunited. Let me give you an example. We all say the Fumban Conference, the Fumban Conference, the Fumban Conference. There was nothing as a Fumban constitution. What emerged from Fumban were constitutional proposals. And these constitutional proposals were put in a legal constitutional form in Yaoundé during the Yaoundé talks from the 2nd of August to the 7th of August 1961. And that was the crucial meeting. And believe me or not, the CPNC was not invited to that social meeting. The CPNC was not. And the Southern Cameroon Bar Association, which had offered its services, was not even invited. So these are things that Cameroonians and more especially Anglophones should understand. And you should ask yourself, why was the Vikuma pressure group created? Vikuma stood for Victoria Kungamati. It was created as a political pressure group to protect and advance the interests of the forest zone of West Cameroon, which is now the Southwest. So they should give you an idea. And several letters were written to Amadou Ahidjo complaining that if the vice president of the Federal Republic comes from the Banda grassfield, the Prime Minister should come from the forest zone. But for political reasons, Amadou Ahidjo did not take to this advice. So that's a situation where from 1961 with the federal government to 1972, the vice president of the Republic came from the Bamida and Grassfield, and the Prime Minister of West Cameroon also came from the Bamida and Grassfield. This is what Amadou Ahidjo did consciously to ensure that the Bamida Grassfield and the forest zone politicians and populations were always at a loggerheads.
Okay, they were at a loggerheads. I'll be coming back to you shortly, Professor. Let me get to the history teacher who is with me here. Please just be on standby. I'm coming back to you very shortly. One of the motives advanced for the move towards a unitary system was to create a more unified country around the president, given the fact that it was a young country. How divided was the political class and the country at the time?
Mr. Lenawi, you need to say more unified class because one of the political reasons why the then president Amada Ayejo also changed Cameroon from federal to unity was to ensure national unity and integration. Yes, they put out national unity and integration. Politically, under federation, many people of West Cameroon today know and Southwest, most of them only remain West Cameroon. They were shy, unwilling on many occasions, giving language differences, most of them were reluctant to go to East Cameroon and vice versa. And vice versa, the same with people of East Cameroon. I think under this issue of national integration, it was further threatened because there were some tribes of West Cameroon having conflict with tribes of East Cameroon. For example, between 1966 and 1967, the Bamile case of East Cameroon had a tribal conflict with the Bakosis of West Cameroon. So the tribal conflict between the Bamile case of East Cameroon and the Bakosi of West Cameroon also further widened and stood as a threat to national unity. And because of that threat to national unity, there was a need for Cameroon to be changed from federal to unitary. Because under federation, the issue of West Cameroon, the issue of East Cameroon was like being apart. It was like being apart. It wasn't by the fact that most West Cameroonians only remain West Cameroon and speak only French. Why most East Cameroon I speak only English. Why most East Cameroon remain only East Cameroon, speak only. That's why we see one of the reasons why Ayejo also advocated, political reasons why he also advocated to change Cameroon from federal to unity was to accelerate bilingualism. Because under federation, West Cameroon only remain West Cameroon speak English. Why East Cameroon remain and speak French? And there were no mingling coming together. And because there were no mingling coming together, there were no bilingual. There was no promotion of bilingualism. So he said that if they change Cameroon from federal to unitary, there was nothing like West Cameroon, there was nothing like West Cameroon. There was nothing like East and West Cameroon. It was only a united Cameroon. And they will come together. And when they come together, it will facilitate bilingualism. And that is a historical fact because when we go to the benefit of recreational unity in West Cameroon, it's called one of the benefit of recreational unity of the people of West Cameroon that many of them became bilingual, speak French, and were speaking French, and because they were speaking French, so they were able to get international job. Example, one of the West Cameroonian or Anglophone who got as one of the first Secretary General for Organization of African Unity that was created in 1968 was a man called Ngoh Kangaki. I think by speaking English and French, they were able to get jobs, international jobs and all that. So coming together was a way of, I just believe that by coming together because under federation, under unitary, the notion of West Cameroon, the notion of East Cameroon was putting the country apart and it threatened national unity. It wasn't by the fact that some tribal group like Bameke of East Cameroon have a tribal conflict with the Bakosis of West Cameroon, that's Anglophone and Francophone. It was like threatening the national integration and unity of Cameroon. And because of that, I just decided that no, if Cameroon can be changed from federal, there will be nothing like West, there will be nothing like East Cameroon. And because of that, it can bet a united Cameroon. And that will facilitate or it will threaten national unity and integration. I think that was the issue of national unity.
I don't know. Is Baka Derek there, please? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Come on with you.
Okay. I'll be getting back to you, Prof. Let me just talk a bit with Baka Derek. Baka Derek, when you look at the explanations given by Prof. Julius Victor Ngoh, want us to establish how united, how divided Cameroon was at the time, and then one of the reasons was to create a more solid, united nation. Is Cameroon more united today compared with what obtained before the movement towards a unitary form of government?
Well, I have followed the very learned professor correctly. I think very well. And I'm afraid to say that it looks like all our problems are coming from this unity. I think I should be very clear about my position on that. Our problems seemingly are coming from this unity and from the events of this particular day in 1972. Because it is from this particular day that the result was made for the unity, from the unity state, and as we all know, the unity state goes with centralized governance. And you can now see that the problems of today emanate from the fact that people do not feel involved in the management of their affairs. They do not feel part of the governance process. And how does it work? You realize that you have the state that functions the way it does. You have the leadership that is central in Yaoundé, is representative at the level of the region, is the governor. At the level of At the level of the division, it is SDO. At the level of the subdivision, it is the DO. To say the least, this is exactly how the feast is celebrated. These are the people who had the ordinary celebration for today, the observance for today. The people had and when you look at all of this, you must see where the people-oriented leaders present itself all of this. If you look at the protocol, except for what is going to happen now, in what they are going to call the status, you can say that you can say for sure that there is no place where the kind of people elected representatives is featured prominently in terms of celebrating this day or in terms of governance as a result of the state. So it is decentralized in its form, right down the level of the subdivision, but you have appointees who are answerable to a particular individual who heads the central system. I think this leaves the country more divided than united, as you are asking, because by virtue of my judgment, you have a people who united these days with separate mindset in their governance. There's another group of people who believed in a situation where they need to be led. Where you see another group of people in the unitary system who believe that they should participate in the governance process. And these things cannot be taken into consideration for all this while. And that's why they feel that they should be part of governance. The governance process, they should be consulted, they should be heard. Town halls and other things constitute part of their way of thinking. They are the question of choices in terms of projects and a couple of other things involved that it should involve them. But you realize that the other side does not function like that because of their colonialism. They have a colonial history that I may not want to use the word dictatorship or that dictatorship to them because I have lived in other parts of this country and I have a feeling that the people, some other people have, the people think that everything should be true and delivered by a government. But you have the other side, where certainly that come from, is a place where we think that we should collaborate and we should participate in the governance process, making the choices, participate in implementation. We have very simple examples that we can draw from. If you want to see how community schools are constructed, you see in the first, it's not the schools are constructed. They take school this way. Parents build a school. We couldn't know that responsibility to participate in the government. Don't happen on that way around. The schools are created by government. You say that the school has stayed for more than 15 years, and they have only 4 classes. You see the mindset, it is completely different, and I think that this is actually a serious problem that this country needs to be reflecting on right now, because I see this day as a day this problem itself actually started, which means we have created a problem for ourselves and we've been living it for almost the past 50 years that the observance is taking place today. I see a more divided Cameroon now than the Cameroon as would have been the case before that incident of 1972 left.
Okay, thank you. We'll be getting back to you. Let's see if Prof is there. Prof. Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof. Are you there?
Yes, please.
Okay, Prof, I want us to get to the actual 1972 incident, the referendum. How was it done? How was the population mobilized towards it and effectively done? How did it go?
Yeah, I think it should be stated very clearly that the campaigns were done in East Cameroon and West Cameroon. As far as West Cameroon was concerned, you had 2 campaign teams. The Northern campaign team, which was for the President Northwest, and the Southern campaign team, which was on East, the President Southwest. The Northern campaign team was headed by Muna and Foncha. The Southern campaign team was Dr. E.M.L. Ndele Langwe, and this is important. Jua was put in the Southern campaign team, and Jua quickly sensed danger and refused to be part of the southern campaign teams. He went and joined the northern campaign team, where you had Mona, Foncha, Bernard Folon, and the rest. So you should ask yourself, if it was not a deliberate attempt to cut off Joa from his political fief. So Joa sensed and went to the northern campaign team. So you had two campaign teams, the southern campaign team and the northern campaign team, as far as West Cameroon was concerned, and they moved to all the divisions and subdivisions and campaign. The population massively came out, be it in Fundong, in Bello, in Jijinikom, in Widikom, in Kumbu, in Mankon, came out massively. Same thing with the southern campaign team, and they all had one message: the advantages of dismantling the federal system. The only opposition came from the UPC. The UPC termed it an annexation, but unfortunately, the UPC did not have a united voice, because some UPC militants supported it, believing that there will be a general amnesty to UPC militants who were in prison, and those abroad would also be allowed to. So the campaign went on smoothly. And the advantages of the unitary system was made the sing song. And I would like to make one point. There were two ballot papers. The white paper and the black or gray paper. The white ballot paper had the question in both French and English, with the answer oui and yes. The gray or black ballot paper had the same question in French and English, with no and no. So this whole misinformation that there was only one ballot paper is so unfortunate. But I should add quickly that it was reported in certain polling stations that there were not enough black ballot papers. That one should be made clear. So the campaign went on smoothly, and the results were counted separately and proclaimed separately. Because Amadou Ahijo made it very clear that if West Cameroon or East Cameroon voted no, then the abrogation of the federal structure would not take place, which meant that if 40% of the voting population in those who voted in West Cameroon voted no, and 100% voted yes in East Cameroon, the abrogation of the federal structure would not have taken place. So this whole idea, this whole misconception that since it was only Southern Cameroons that did the plebiscite in 1961, so only West Cameroonians should have been allowed to be involved in the referendum in 1972, giving the impression that it was the vast French-speaking population or the vast Francophone population that made it possible for the federal structure to be dismantled. No, the votes were counted separately.
The votes were counted separately, and what was the outcome?
In Cameroon, 99% yes. In East Cameroon, almost the same. Now, so this should be made clear.
Prof, now there is also a controversy on the constitutionality of the holding of that referendum. Many persons think that the federal constitution was violated.
Yeah, in fact, I've argued with my colleagues, and some, for whatever reason, say no, it is unconstitutional. And what most Cameroonians, and especially most Anglophones, don't even understand, who in the first even tell you. Who? And this is the point. When I told late Molan George Tumbe, he was shocked. He was shocked. And as history is history, and I would like to make it very clear, the historian is just a messenger to tell or say what happened. They should not kill the messenger for and delivering the news. No. What happened was this. In August 1961, the draft federal constitution was debated, adopted by the members of parliament of the National Assembly of the Republic of Cameroon, August 1961. It was not even by a referendum. So that would make it very clear. Article 47 said in summary form, any revision of this constitution which affects the unity and territorial integrity of the federation will be inadmissible. Fine. Article 2 of that same federal constitution says what? Sovereignty lies with the Cameroonian people. And you don't need to be a student of political science or diplomacy or international relations or history to understand what is meant by sovereignty lies with the people. Article 2 says sovereignty lies with the Cameroonian people, and they can exercise their sovereignty either through their elected members of parliament or in a referendum. And if you bear in mind, and this is what Cameroonians and Anglophone must understand and should understand, if you know fully well that the draft federal constitution was adopted by members of parliament of the Republic of Cameroon. Let's have it clear. By members of parliament of the Assembly of the Republic of Cameroon, not even by a referendum. And Article 2 says what? Sovereignty lies with the people, and they can exercise this sovereignty either by through their members of parliament or by a referendum. And that was what Amadou Ahidjo did. And there was even this veto power clause, which the West Cameroon politicians, because they supported the dismantling of the federal structure, did not use. It made it very clear that on second reading of a motion, if the majority, simple majority of members of the West of West Cameroon MPs in the National Assembly voted against it, that motion will not pass. So the West Cameroon members of parliament in the National Assembly had that veto power. They never used it. They all voted for it. So why should we complain now? And as I've said, sovereignty lies with the Cameroonian people. And Amadou Ahidjo, on the 6th of May 1972, when he presented his idea, he made it very clear that sovereignty lies with the Cameroonian people. And he even went further and said the Cameroonian people are masters of their destiny. That's what he said. And when in the National Assembly he talked of dismantling the federal structure, the applause was fantastic. The whole show. And then when he made the next statement that he will replace it with a unity system, everybody clapped. The applause was fantastic. So we should not come and say, oh, it was about election. First of all, ask yourself, who approved the draft federal constitution in August 1961? Who?
Now,
Cameroonians and the first talked of Article 47 without asking themselves who approved the draft federal constitution in August 1961 before Amadou Ahidjo signed it on the 1st of September 1961.
Now, are you saying that at the time the referendum took place, the MPs that were supposed to use the veto power at the level of the assembly, did they go campaigning for the dismantling of this structure? They did not oppose. Yeah.
I've said that and I'll repeat it. They all went and campaigned for the dismantling of the federal system. All of them. All of them. All of them. The one or two West Cameroonians who did not, included the one-time principal of CPC Bali, and he was arrested for campaigning against it. But of course, he was not a member of parliament.
Now, how do we understand the posture of Ewane Ndeli, who wanted a union rather with Nigeria? Did he not pull through with that stance?
You see, let me just give you one example, one funny incident. At the Forba conference, when Joa insisted to John Gufoncha to present the Southern Cameroon draft constitution, which they had adopted at the Bamenda All-Party Constitutional Conference, and Joa refused. There was a quarrel, heated a quarrel between Joa and Fonch. And Madu Ahidjo, in his white gondola, stood from afar, was watching them smiling. And he was smiling. And Bile called Dr. Ewane Ndeli and said, please let us go and advise Joa and Poncha not to publicly and do what they are doing. And in the little Bile, them to do what they are doing, they are the ones who brought us here. So that is an idea. So Dr. Ewane, after the plebiscite, they agreed in New York, April 1961, to work towards making reunification successful. They agreed on the truth. They arrived at Boya, May 1961, and reaffirmed the truth that they have put behind them their differences, and they work towards making reunification a success. But unfortunately, after Fumba, the CPNC was not invited to any of the meetings that Foncha took his KNDP members to discuss with Amadou Ahidjo. The CPNC was not a member. And to give you a sense of what I'm saying, in September 1961, when the federal constitution was presented to the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly, Motomi Wedeta took the floor and said, as far as Article 47 is concerned, I hope that Mr. Foncha will move over to Yaoundé and tell Mr. Ahidjo that we made an error here. But that was never done. That should tell you that if the CPNC was in Yaoundé during the Yaoundé talks of 2nd August to 7th August 1961, the CPNC would have refused to allow Article 47 to go through. But the Southern Cameroon delegation was an all KNDP delegation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. We'll be getting back to you. Let me get over to Bamenda with Baka Derek. Derek, you have followed what is happening. We see that in the past, most politicians wanted to seek the protection and favors of President Ahmadou Ahidjo, agreeing to dissolving their parties. When we observe the political scene today, do you think much has changed?
Sorry, Renata, I didn't hear you well. Please, can you help come back again, please?
I'm talking about the division that actually operated amongst politicians in West Cameroon. Almost all of them walked behind the doors of others to seek the favors and protection of President Ahmadou Ahidjo, to the extent that they dissolved their political parties in favor of the CNU of President Ahmadou Ahidjo. When you look at what obtains amongst politicians, even Anglophone politicians today and across the board, has much changed.
I am actually just going to trying to just approximately. The question, I think, is evolved around the posture taken by politicians then and the ones of today. I really need to get you properly, but if I want to make a suggestion in relation to that or make an opinion, I think today's political landscape in the region, let me try to try to examine the political situation at least before 2016. And then, that of 1972, going by the lot of work Prof has explained was done by then politicians, monarchs, and the politicians and the rest. If I am to look at, if I look at the people today who pass for our politicians, I have a very strong feeling that that kind of debate that operated in 1972, we may not happen anymore. Because if you look at the numbers and then you compare them to the effect, the feeling that you have many more politicians these days, but the effect really does not look like what we had in those days. We have had some of them, we have heard some opinions lash out at them, those of 1972, claiming that some of them were, school teachers or elementary school teachers who didn't have lots of opinion, who didn't know lots of things to be able to make a strong debate. But the question now is those who are there, in all their learnedness, the question is how much of contribution are they making to improve on the situation and to improve on the unity that was fought for by those people in those days. You realize that very little work is done. There's a lot of personalization around duties and resources, and you can notice that those who are active politics, I am talking about those who are MPs, those who are senators, and a couple of others. You realize that there's a lot of thoughts only around themselves. How much before 2016? I said so because between 2016 and now, lots of things have happened, and people can justify their absence or some of the things they do. Because before that, what effectively are they doing? Were they comfortable with the development? Were they comfortable with situations or with the situation that we had? The question would certainly be no, because the progress that was made by the contract time did not reflect exactly what the aspirations of people. And so I think that in as much as those politicians of those days may be thwarted very make this decision, we also need to fall these double for keeping such an action that we not people that it's not people oriented, that it is intentionally designed to foster it. Of course, I don't know whether it was by error, but I heard the leader of the nation say sometimes that there were intentional efforts to assimilate, the I don't know whether it was a slip of the tongue, but to me that was shocking, and that looks like exactly what the politicians have been stopping and trying to do. So I want to invite them. Everybody is hiding behind the crisis said, I can't do this because of the armed conflict. I can't do this. But before 2016, what was happening? What effectively did they do? You know, we have a region with all its difficulties. I heard someone, I mean, like 2 years ago, say that the difficulty we manage this situation on the ground is also because countries underdeveloped the place. And if they underdeveloped the place, you know, what did the politicians do so that the place was better, that it felt like the rest of the country? I think that to me, as much as I will hold out of that being for making that error, I think these ones actually work because they have the numbers, they have the intellectual capacity, and they have lots of other things that they can do to be able to improve the situation and make it more united, you know.
Okay, but Baka, Derek, we are where we are at today. What are some of the errors you can pinpoint from what the politicians did yesterday that should be worked on today to meet the objectives that were set for moving the nation from a federal to a unitary system? And how do we get a nation that is culturally very divided to fit into the political structure that obtains today in Cameroon?
Now, if we look at the errors, you know, I think, I made an effort in trying to point out some. First, we had, I think, there's an emblematic figure that this region would miss for a long time, who by virtue of his style gave people the feel that they were also participating in the governance process. I'm talking about the very honorable and late part-time mother Chinje too. I mean, I'm sure that they are, from what I grew up to learn, and when I started as a crop reporter, as a young reporter here, and I started following his activities, you realize that in his style, there are lots of things that mobilize people around him and accompany him. And I think that things that our politicians need to learn from, to learn how to bring people closer, learn how to get people involved, learn how to go along with the aspirations of the people. These are mistakes to me that we made in those things. You know, the referendum process, I mean, it's one thing too that we need to learn. I don't know why it sounds like we want to shy away from it. But if it happened in those days, that was something that was good, and the politicians fought for it. I don't know why these ones now can't fight for that, because it will only afford them the opportunity to be able to convince people that no, the things that we might have been misinterpreting as reasons for the failure in unity are not correct. And this is exactly what the right thing. And maybe even there were corrections to be made, this is the way forward. So if those politicians those days were not able to take a position that will allow them to explain effectively the functioning of the system, I mean, these ones today should be able to take that responsibility. But with the worsening situation, how can they, when they have actually had difficulties? As I said, I have difficulties trying to do a benchmark between 1972 politicians and politicians of today, I mean, as in 2022. I prefer to do that benchmark with politicians of 2016 because all of them were working in peacetime. And when you're working in peacetime, you have the opportunity to listen. You have the opportunity to be listened to. You have the opportunity to make proposals. But as I speak to you today, it is no longer the same. These people who pass for politicians, just to inject this a little full letter. The other day, I was talking to someone in public. I mean, when we had a small activity, and then I introduced him as ordinary counselor, and he had a problem. He took offense that I was referring to him as a counselor in public. That's to tell you how bad it is for the politicians who are on the ground today. Now, are they accepted? They are no longer accepted anymore. And so they must be where we are now. We need to look for a better way to be more open, but not open. I'm not too sure open to the grassroots this way anymore. We need to look for people. The conversation with the bigger elite, and the stakeholders in the armed conflict that we have, and which also means that people have to dare. In 1972, the fronters and the rest of the people dared to challenge the status quo, because if they did not challenge with authority, we might have not even gotten to a level of a referendum to find out whether they should be unity state or not. So people should also learn to challenge status quo, rise up to the occasion and say, but I mean, this is the situation that we have, and can we have a referendum? I think this is the only thing I challenge our politicians to fight for right now and to demand. so that it provides people to hear, because I'm sure even if there's an announcement that is taking place in 2 or 3, I'm sure there will be some calm. Why not? Where we should be to hear, can our politicians take from stand and stop being the downstairs, the president, from this is the elected people of these days. And some people can still the president that only accept what the president says.
Okay, thank you very much, Baka Derek. Now, can we understand the postures? I asked this earlier on to Prof already, but you saw Foncha through this process, Munas and the host of others, they were deeply involved. Prof says they campaigned. I'm sure you can attest to that. How do we explain their postures after they fell out of grace with the current regime?
Mr. Leonard, I think before I will talk on that, I think I will again highlight on this issue of the campaign for the referendum, the atmosphere on that 20th of May 1972. What we Anglophones, most of the time we focus on is the legality of the Constitution, or the Federal Constitution. There were 60 articles altogether in Forba. They drafted 60 articles, and we always focus on Article 47, which states that nothing should be done to tamper with the federal structure of the Federal Republic of Congo. Nothing should be done to tamper with the federal integrity. It should remain the Federal Republic. But going through the 60 articles of the Forba Federal Constitution, there's a lot of contradiction. Because why Article 47 emphasizes on nothing should be done to impair or to tamper with the federal structure, you go to Article 2, as Professor Julius was saying, it's there, it's history. We talk on platforms like researchers in history and not politicians. Politicians want to tell people what they want to hear. We give the facts as history states it, whether you want to hear it or not. Those are historical facts. Article 47 says nothing should be done to tamper with the federal structure of Cameroon. But Article 2 goes to say that the sovereignty, national sovereignty of people can be given to the people, and people can express it by 2 ways, either through a referendum or through the Federal Assembly. And again, apart from Article 2, you go to Article 8. Article 8 states that before a law could be promulgated or accepted or adopted, it must pass through the Federal Assembly. If Article 8 says that if before a law could be adopted or promulgated, pass through the Federal Assembly, Article 18 states clear that had it been only a majority of West Cameroon House of Assembly null or cancel they wouldn't have organized any referendum, because there were 2 Houses of Assembly, the West Cameroon 10 members or 10 deputies, and East Cameroon 40. But Article 18 said that had it be only 6 out of the 10 in West Cameroon cancel the federation, say no, they wouldn't have been organizing a federation. That's Article 18 of the Former Federal Constitution. Because most time we focus on Article 47, forgetting that Article 8 have said that had it been any law.
Okay, Article 8.
And it stated that
47 sub 8 of 47 says that
for the 7 emphasize on nothing to be done to tamper with the federal structure of the Republic of Cameroon. It will remain a federation. But Article 2 can say that the sovereignty of the people, they can express their sovereignty by way of referendum or through the House of Assembly. But Article 8 says that before any law could be adopted, before any law, each House of Assembly, if a majority adopt it, say yes, it can go.
Which means that the Assembly, West Cameroon Assembly, had voted for it?
That is it. Had it be only 6 members of the 10, because there were 10 members of the West Cameroon Assembly, only 10 deputies. In East Cameroon, there were 40, because they totally were 50 Federal Assembly. Had it be only 6 out of 10 in West Cameroon, null, say no to the referendum wouldn't have been organized.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it was not. Mr. Lo, I want this thing because we are educating, people are listening to us. And I will come again to lay more emphasis. Mr. Leonard, it is so surprising that most members of the West Cameroon Assemblies, most members of the West Cameroon Assembly were instead those who were supporting West Cameroon Assembly, those who were instead supporting President Amada Ayejo campaigning to organize a referendum in West Cameroon. Let me say, for example, Mr. Leonard, let's look at who were instead against the organization of referendum in West Cameroon, because everybody was in favor of the creation of unity state there. For example, even the religious bodies there, the then Yaoundé Archbishop Bishop Jacques Zoua called for an episcopal conference in Yaoundé just around 1718 before the 20th of May. And giving bishops of Bamenda, the then Bishop Vicos of Bamenda, and other bishops like Mongo of Douala and other attended, and all of them were in favor of unity state. Even the political class of West, all of them in favor of unity. Even traditional rulers, like the then traditional rulers of Batibo, GTT Mba, who was the then CNU subsection for Momo, he was in favor of unity state. With other the fund of Bafura, many others were in favor of unity state. Let's look at that. Because sometimes we, as I look this time, looking at Anglophones, sometimes we only lay emphasis on Article 47 that Ayo went against that, but there are other contradictory articles. For example, now, who are the people who were against the creation of unity state? The first was UPC, and UPC was not from West Cameroon. It was not a West Cameroon political party. UPC was an East Cameroon political party. It was created on the 10th of April 1948 in Douala, Juvett. It was the UPC was the first people who said, the UPC said no to creation of unity state. UPC said that is annexation and no to France. According to UPC, they were seeing France. UPC was seeing France in creation of unity state and then the government of Mr. Arejo. Apart from UPC, which other political party in West Cameroon? There was one political party in West Cameroon called One Cameroon under a man called Tomasa. He was also against the creation of unity state. The only religious body in West Cameroon who said no, they will not participate in the creation of unity was Jehovah's Witness. The reason why Jehovah's Witness was against the creation of unity was because it goes against their faith. Voting is against their faith. And the last people who were against the creation of unity state, politicians of West Cameroon, the people who were doing campaign, the last class of people in West Cameroon who were against the creation of unity state, in the Fundong subdivision, there was a certain man called Stephen Timti Nges, and there was another man called Martin Saul. And in the then CPC Bali today, that's the Protestant college, or CPC Bali, Cameroon Protestant College, there was a certain principal, Samuel Niba. He was not a member of parliament, an ordinary citizen. Just like people who were saying no to the creation of unity, they said they were campaigning for people say vote for the black ballot papers, which says no or no, and not the white ballot paper which say yes or no. But they were arrested because they were seen as normal ordinary citizens. The people who had the constitutional powers to stop the creation of unity state with the West Cameroon House of Assembly and politicians, as Professor Ngoh was stating. But unfortunately, their own self-centeredness, their own selfishness, they were instead the people fighting to campaign. Because before that, on that 20th of October 1972, decrees were signed. The first was signed on the 8th of May 1972 on how the campaign will be organized. And the second decree was signed on the 12th of May 1917, creating the voting committee to count the voting. The voting committee for West Cameroon, they had their own voting committee who were in charge, as the Prof. Julius stated. There was a certain Henry Langwe who was in charge of one of the members of the county committee. At the end of the day, the two voting were counted separately, Mr. Leonard. East Cameroon had one vote, that's 99.7, while West Cameroon had a vote of 99.8, even higher than those of East Cameroon, who voted in favor of unity. We want to look at this, because we had that mentality that there was a lot of maneuver in West Cameroon, backbiting, character and assassination. Professor Julius even stated clear that in February, that was precisely on the 12th of February 1972, the then Prime Minister of West Cameroon, he wrote a secret letter, confidential letter to Arejo, pleading that many other West Cameroonians, Estimona, went to Arejo to tell Arejo that this particular Augustin Gomjo want to create a political party which goes against the norms of the Federal Republic of Cameroon, because it was only a single political party that was created. Because we need to be clarifying these things. So there was a lot of backbiting among West Cameroon politicians. We cannot go to forget about Professor Julius made mention of a certain on 11th of November 1964, a certain Mesombe Waters, Winston, 11th February 1964, 11th of November 1964, a certain Mesombe Waters, Winston, created what was known as Vicoma, that is Victoria Kumba Manfi, to protect those of grassland, to protect the coastal and the forest today, southwest, from being dominated by majority grass fee under the Federation. And these are historical facts. Under the Federation, the government of Mr. Foncha, from the grass field, KNDP, most of members of his government were from the northwest, today northwest, or the grass field region. It is very clear. Look at the West Cameroon Development Agency. It was in charge of project in West Cameroon. Most members there were some who could not even write their names. But what the main issue about them being members of, or being appointed, or being members of the particular West Cameroon Development Agency was because of their closeness to the party and know what they can do. So Vicoma was created by to protect the southwest, because we begin to look at the number of ministers, or prime minister of West Cameroon, even population of West Cameroon, most of them were from the grassland region, especially for the West Cameroon Development Agency. So the Vicoma also created it to protect the coastal and forest to the southwest from being dominated by majority. So a combination of many factors from West Cameroon pushed Arejo to create a unity state. Not forgetting civil servant, Mr. Leonard. The civil servants in West Cameroon were in total mess because the West Cameroon had a bank called the West Cameroon Bank. They were in total financial mess. When we talk about one of the major economic reasons why I just changed Cameroon federal to unitary, we forget about the financial crisis by West Cameroon Bank. In 1966, a commission was created under the charter account called Jockey Manga. When Jockey Manga gave the statistics of the West Cameroon Bank, it was clear that West Cameroon Bank had borrowed money on loan and lost huge amount of millions of money from the West Cameroon Bank, so that in 1966 it was unable to pay civil servants in West Cameroon. In 1966, the bank could not pay civil servants in West Cameroon. Meanwhile, civil servants in East Cameroon had the higher salaries. So by 1972, all West Cameroonian civil servants were crying that Cameroon should be changed from federal to unitary. Why? So that her salary will be harmonized and they will have better and regular salary than those of East Cameroon. So it was a combination of many things. What about the 16,000 CDC workers? Between 1961 and 1972, CDC had about 16,000 workers. They were unable to, they could not pay them. The CDC were not able to pay them. So that when a commission was created to again look at the financial crisis in West Cameroon under a man called Joseph Ebale, at the end of the discovered that West Cameroon is totally in financial mess. So that these workers, the commission gave only recommendation that the only way for West Cameroon to be free from financial mess is that they should stop free primary school education. Primary school should pay fees. There should not be free education. Rent should be paid on CDC land and many other tools to solve this problem. But by that time, we know that we have not discovered oil in West Cameroon. Oil will be coming in 1964. We are talking of between 1961 and 1965, because the issue of oil in West Cameroon, a certain German exploitation mineral resource in 1904 already giving France and French Cameroon the idea that there is a large deposit of crude oil around the Njan Victoria Bay, but it had not been exploited. So there was a combination of many things within West Cameroon that pushed the people. At the end of the day, it was infighting, people's personality, self-interest that support or put Aijo a stand to create unity by 1972. Notwithstanding, Aijo had his own ambition, his own backing, even from France and other things. But I looked sometimes within West Cameroon, because I'm saying this because today, Mr. Leo, you were talking about comparing West Cameroon. You were talking about comparing the politicians of West Cameroon and today. I keep saying that there's an Anglophone crisis. But the foundation of Anglophone crisis stand on the Anglophone disunity. That is the glaring fact. Okay,
Prof, once again, we are back to you. I don't know whether you've been following up what Ndukong Clovis has been developing out here in the studio. I want you raised an issue that Foncha went to see the Fund on Soil to create a political party. What was the objective of that move?
The objective was to have a multi-party structure back, given the fact that the Constitution did not outlaw multi-party politics. Of course, it was against the plan and design of Amadou Ahidjo. And you should understand that at that time, Foncha was no longer vice president of the Federal Republic. He had been replaced in 1970.
So, that after that, why did he not form it?
The point that they all got scared because the whole idea leaked. And let me give you a point. It got to a point where Augustine Governor had to clear his name, and he made it very clear that he is aware that, of the idea of forming a political party, but he is not part of it, and he's going to stay in Bamenda. That was what he said. That he is aware of it, but he was not part of it.
Now, when you look at the political class that obtained at the time and what we have today, with people who wanted to please President Amadou Ahidjo, can we say that much has changed with the political class we have today? Is there greater or better unity amongst the political class today?
Unfortunately, if I have to take the truth out,